Hello everyone, welcome back. In this lesson, I'm going to share with you the best timing to enter your arbitrage position and also the best timing to exit your position. This is one of the most important parts of the strategy because good timing can help you earn more funding income while reducing unnecessary risk. There are two good timing for funding rate arbitrage. One is the best timing to minimize the funding rate movement risk. Another good timing is to reduce the slippage time between two exchange in order to set up a better delta neutral position. Let's talk about how to minimize the funding rate movement risk first. First, let's go to coinglass.com and open the funding rate history chart. Let's use Bitcoin as the example. By default, the chart shows 8-hour bars. This means each bar represents the finalized funding rate at the end of every 8-hour cycle. But you need to understand something. The funding rate is actually changing every single minute. It is recalculated continuously by each exchange's algorithm based on the live market conditions. If you change the time frame to 1 minute, you'll notice that the funding rate keeps moving up and down throughout the day. So even though the final number is fixed at the settlement time, the value itself is always fluctuating. Now that we know this, let's talk about the best time to set up your arbitrage. You might guess it. When I first started as a beginner, I often felt impulsive. Whenever I saw a very attractive high net funding bar on the chart, I rushed to open my arbitrage position immediately. But very often, by the time the 8-hour cycle ended, the funding rate shrank and the final value was not as high as I expected. Sometimes I even realized that a better arbitrage opportunity appeared later, and I had already locked myself into a less profitable one. After a lot of trial and error, I finally found the best timing to enter, about 30 minutes before the funding cycle ends. For example, if the funding cycle ends at 8, I will begin setting up my arbitrage around 7:30. Most of the time, in the last 30 minutes, the funding rate becomes much more stable. It doesn't fluctuate as wildly as in the earlier hours. On the other hand, if you enter too early, say at 1 p.m., you're exposed to nearly 7 hours of risk before the next settlement at 8 p.m. The funding rate may rise or fall dramatically during that time, and you might end up with a far smaller profit than expected. So to minimize funding rate uncertainty, it's best to enter during the last 30 minutes of the cycle. You might also ask, why not enter at the last minute? The reason is simple. You still need time to place your orders, adjust your limit order, and wait for it to be executed as a maker order. If you rush too close to the settlement time, you may end up paying taker fees or missing the chance to balance both sides. So 30 minutes is the sweet spot. You may also notice a field on CoinGlass called predicted. Does it work? In my experience, not really. I've never found it to be accurate or reliable, so I recommend ignoring it completely. Now, I'm going to show you a very practical technique, how to minimize slippage risk when you set up your arbitrage position. To understand this, we need to look at the global market schedule. Across the three major financial markets, the United States, Europe, and Japan, there is one specific time window each day when all three markets are closed at the same time. And that period happens to be that's 7 p.m. to midnight GMT. During this 5-hour window, the US market has already closed, Europe hasn't opened yet, and Japan is still asleep. In other words, the entire traditional financial world is on pause. What does this mean for us? It means this is the quietest time of the global market with the lowest liquidity and the least volatility. And for funding rate arbitrage, this is actually a huge advantage. When the market is calm, prices move slowly and smoothly, and there are far fewer sudden spikes or unpredictable jumps. This makes it much easier to set up a clean, accurate delta neutral position with almost zero slippage. For example, when you place a limit short order on Bitunix and a market long on MEXC, doing this during a high volatility period can be risky. prices may jump several ticks within 1 second, and your two entry prices may end up far apart, breaking your delta neutral structure and creating unnecessary losses. But when you set up your arbitrage between that's 7 p.m. to midnight GMT, prices tend to move slowly and steadily. The order book is calm. You can adjust your limit order carefully, wait for the market to come to your price, and almost always get a maker execution instead of a taker fee. So here's the key takeaway. If you want to minimize slippage and maximize entry accuracy, the best time to set up your arbitrage is between 7 p.m. to midnight GMT. This is the quietest time of the global trading day, and it gives you the most stable environment to build your hedge. Now let's talk about the best timing to exit your arbitrage position. If the net funding rate remains positive, most of the time your position will naturally close when your stop loss or take profit is triggered, usually because of a sudden price spike. This is normal. But let's say the funding rate begins to decay, or you discover a much better arbitrage opportunity. There are two possibilities. First, if the new opportunity is significantly better than your current one, for example, the funding rate is high enough to cover the exit and entry fee on both exchange. You can close your existing positions at about 7:30 again, 30 minutes before the cycle ends, and then enter the new arbitrage position immediately after closing. Second, if you simply want to stop, maybe you want to withdraw crypto, then the best time to exit is right after the funding cycle ends. That way, you collect the final funding payment before you close your trades. The most important point you must remember is this. Funding rate is only calculated at the exact settlement time. It does not matter how long you hold the position between funding cycles. You only earn funding at the final moment of each cycle. I hope this lesson gives you a much clearer understanding of the best entry timing and the best exit timing. These small adjustments can dramatically improve your results and help you maximize your funding income while keeping your risk low.